You ever have one of those mornings where you see something so outrageous, so completely upside down, you have to stop, blink, and ask yourself if you're actually awake? That was me, mid-stride on my usual run through Maple Creek Estates, just hoping for some endorphins and peace before work, when I stumbled into the kind of scene you just don't forget: a full-sized yellow school bus, the special needs kind with the hydraulic lift and wide door, stopped dead in the street by a single woman in a flowery sundress and blindingly white sneakers, standing there with her arms crossed like she was the final boss of suburbia. I swear, the way she blocked that 10-ton bus, it was so surreal it almost looked staged. But there she was, not budging an inch, not even blinking at the bus driver, Frank, who sat behind the wheel looking both exhausted and exasperated. And let me tell you, this wasn't just any bus. It was the short bus, the one that carried our district's most vulnerable kids, the ones who needed a little extra help getting through the day. You could see their little faces pressed to the glass, confusion, turning quickly to worry, and even fear. And right then, standing 50 yards away, I felt that old, familiar knot in my gut, the one that always showed up when something was about to go very, very wrong. Now let me back up a sec. I'm Dr. Eris Thorne. At least that's the name on a stack of state paperwork and a door that's too heavy to open before 8 a.m. I'm the Deputy Director of Education Oversight for the whole state, which is a fancy way of saying I spend my days elbow-deep in legalese and heartbreak trying to protect kids who get lost in the cracks. But I'd moved here to Maple Creek Estates for some damn peace and quiet. I'd done my time in the city fighting policy wars and political landmines, and all I wanted was a leafy street, a porch swing, and the chance to be known as just Eris, the neighbor with the slow recycling bins. I didn't even want to get mixed up in HOA politics. But you know how it goes first week in the new place, and there's Brenda Miller, the HOA president, sending out emails about my trash cans being put out at 4:45 instead of 5. Welcome wagon right. Still. I shrugged it off. Small price to pay for peace, or so I thought. What I hadn't realized is that Maple Creek's perfect lawns and clipped hedges hid a pretty dark underbelly, one that you'd never spot until you saw someone like Brenda standing in the middle of the road daring a school bus full of special needs kids to try her patience. Thing is, it hit a little close for me because I'd been that angry, powerless kid before. Back in second grade, my best friend Michael, sweet kid, Coke bottle glasses, could barely get 2 words out without tripping on his own tongue, had been humiliated by a substitute teacher in front of the whole class. Told him to spit it out while everyone laughed. I snapped, yelled, got sent to the principal, and that was it for me. From that day on, I promised myself I'd never stand by and let bullies win no matter how well-dressed or passive-aggressive they were. So, watching Brenda, this woman I'd only known as the queen of garbage day etiquette, stand her ground against a bus that had every legal right to be there, I realized this wasn't about property values or street safety. It was about exclusion, plain and simple. Frank the bus driver was just doing his job, trying to keep kids like Leo Harrison, who used a wheelchair, and Lily, who had Down syndrome, safe on their way to school. But Brenda saw them as a blemish, something to hide before the judges rolled through for their fancy awards. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just Brenda having a bad day or losing her temper over traffic. This was orchestrated. A couple weeks back, I'd caught Brenda scolding Frank for taking too long to load Leo, flapping her hands and pointing at her watch, while Leo's mom just tried to get her son up the ramp without anyone getting hurt. Not long after, a letter showed up at my work signed by Brenda, making wild claims about noise pollution and dangerous emissions, demanding the bus stop be moved all the way out to the community gate, which, if you know the layout, would have left these kids stranded by a busy road with no sidewalks. The complaints, as it turned out, were just 3 identical form letters, no doubt cooked up in Brenda's own home office. I started digging because that's what I do. Was there a personal grudge? Did Brenda lose out on a house to the Harrisons? Some ancient lawsuit? Nothing. Just pure cold ambition. And then, as fate would have it, I found the real smoking gun in a dentist's waiting room of all places, a glossy lifestyle magazine with a cover story about America's perfect suburb. And Maple Creek, wouldn't you know, was in the running for a six-figure grant and a giant gold leaf trophy. The judge's main criteria: tranquility, uniformity, no disruptions. Suddenly, Brenda's crusade against the bus made twisted sense. She didn't just want to win an award. She wanted to erase anything or anyone that didn't fit her perfect vision, even if it meant bullying children and their families into silence. And then things got even uglier. Frank called my office one morning, voice shaking, telling me someone had left broken glass at the bus stop right where Leo's wheelchair would roll. Yesterday, it had been thorny rose clippings. It was clear this wasn't random, and it sure as hell wasn't an accident. This was calculated harassment. That was the last straw. I wasn't just going to wait for something worse to happen. So when I saw Brenda out there blocking the bus on the exact morning the Golden Maple Leaf judges were scheduled to take their secret tour, I knew what I had to do. I picked up my pace and made my way down the hill. Frank caught my eye in the mirror, gave me a look that said he was at the end of his rope, but grateful. I nodded and stepped up. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Brenda didn't even turn, just snapped that she was conducting a citizen's protest. I told her flat out, "You're blocking a school bus. You need to move." That got her attention. She spun around, all outrage and self-importance, barking about her authority as HOA president, claiming the bus had no right to be there. "You're on a public road," I told her, "and that bus is protected by federal law." She scoffed, dismissed me as just some jogger, but I stood my ground. The kids inside were watching Lily already crying, Leo's eyes wide. I felt the old rage coming back, the same fire that lit me up in second grade. Then a police cruiser rolled up, silent but sure, and Sergeant Evans stepped out. He took in the scene, listened to Frank, and then told Brenda as gently as he could that her bylaws didn't supersede state law, and she needed to move or face arrest. Brenda puffed up, threw around her title, but her hands were shaking. She knew the judges were coming, that her whole plan was about to collapse. I stepped between her and the cop, laid it all out. Who I was. What laws were being broken. The credible reports of deliberate endangerment, the harassment of families, the violation of rights. These kids were guaranteed by law. Brenda's face went white. A few neighbors had gathered, and when I mentioned what she'd said to Sarah, that Lily's disability was bad for property values, you could see the shock ripple through the crowd. Sarah, tears streaming, confirmed every word. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Just then the judge's black SUV turned onto the street. Brenda lost it, shrieking that they couldn't see this ugliness, that it ruined the harmony. And that right there was the confession. Sergeant Evans had heard enough. He arrested her on the spot, the click of the cuffs echoing down the street. Brenda's so-called reign of order ended with her being marched off in front of her perfect lawns and clipped hedges exposed for the whole neighborhood to see. And you know what? It changed things. The story made the evening news. The judges withdrew Maple Creek from the award. The HOA board kicked Brenda out fast and unanimous. The state followed through on charges, and a federal investigation slammed the HOA with new rules and required sensitivity training. But the real transformation happened in people's hearts. Neighbors who'd never spoken before came out to support the Harrisons and Lily's family. Mr. Harrison, Leo's grandfather, organized a true community meeting. No HOA, no agendas, just people talking honestly about what kind of neighborhood they wanted. They took a vote, and the funds Brenda wanted for her shiny plaque. They built a proper bus shelter for the kids. Wooden beams, plexiglass roof, the works. A symbol not just of protection from the weather, but of real, hard-won belonging. Weeks later, I'm back at my kitchen window, mug in hand, watching Frank pull up to the new shelter. Leo wheels over, taps his device, and a little voice says, "Good morning, Frank." Lily's waving with that sunshine smile, another boy reading quietly on the bench. No fear, no tension, just a community doing right by its own. I stepped outside to start my run, and Leo came over, eyes shining, and typed out, "Thank you for being our friend." I knelt beside him, voice thick, and told him the truth. "You're the heroes, Leo. All of you. You remind the rest of us what matters." That's the thing. It's easy to get lost in rules, paperwork, politics. But sometimes all it takes is a little courage, a little outrage, and a whole lot of heart to remind a neighborhood and maybe the world that community isn't about hiding imperfections. It's about showing up for each other no matter what. So tell me, what do you think? Who was right, who was wrong, and what would you have done? Drop your thoughts below because sometimes the real fight for justice starts right on your own street.